Welcome back. With the gacha system for Arknight's Endfield finally revealed, we are already seeing a huge amount of players pass through the filter, saying they don't want to touch a game with such predatory gacha mechanics. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you why the Arknight's Endfield gacha system is actually much better than you think, and I'm going to prove that using a piece of code which calculates gacha output, which I'm going to reveal at the end of the video, so you better stick around. Just before we jump into the content, I've got something I want to talk to you about. Creating these videos over the past 2 years has been super fun, but it's also a lot of work. So help me make more content for you by checking out Rage Shadow Legends. I'm sure you all know about it at this point. It's a fun fantasy-themed turn-based RPG game, all about collecting characters and fighting powerful enemies. It's got all the RPG game essentials, tons of amazing gameplay, and incredibly fleshed out endgame content. So, if you're a fan of this stuff, you're going to love it. You'll also get rewards valued at more than $200 by downloading it using my link in the description and the pinned comment. It's free, you won't regret it, and I would really appreciate it. Now let's get on to the content. So as a recap and TLDR of the Endfield gacha system, every pull is worth 500 gems, aka Oro Barrel. There are 4, 5, and 6 star characters with the following rates. You are guaranteed a 5 star every 10 pull and a 6 star every 80 pulls, but also guaranteed the rate up 6 star once you hit the 120 pulls once, because it's a 50-50 without a pity. Once you lose a 50-50, you roll one of the 7 characters that are in the lost pool, which will always be 2 limited characters and the 5 standard characters. Whether or not more standards will be added in the future is currently unknown, but I would say probably not. Every 240 pulls you do, you are guaranteed an extra token for the on-banner 6 star, which is just a whale guarantee. Pay attention though, you do not get a guaranteed token at the 240th pull, you are guaranteed an extra token every 240 pulls, which means if you get the on-banner 6 star on pull number 240, you are guaranteed an extra token. Finally, whenever you pull, you get arsenal tickets for weapon acquisition based on the rarity of the character you got. The thing people hate the most and are complaining about the most about this gacha system is that 1. The currency per pull is way too high, 2. The 120 spark guarantee doesn't carry over to future banners, which is made even worse by 3. The fact that the 50-50s don't have a guarantee either. This of course means that 120 is the only actual guarantee you have to getting the first copy of the rate up character, so let's really dive in and see whether these complaints are valid. The first one I've seen, which is most definitely the stupidest one, is complaining that you need 500 of—
I was wondering, this guy's editor gives me box 2 vibes. He is using every single Gen Z meme that possibly can be in a single video.
the currency per pull, acting as if that's predatory or something. This complaint is 100% coming from people who have only played the big 4 gacha games, because everybody else would know that the amount of currency you need per pull is completely irrelevant. In Genshin Impact, you need 160 Primogens for a pull, we know that. The same goes for both Wuwa and HSR, although for the longest time until recently, Wuthering Waves and HSR rewarded the players with way more currency every patch, until Genshin's patches became slightly more rewarding. Despite the currency per pull ratio staying the same, Wuwa and HSR were nearly twice as rewarding. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? No? Okay, let's give another example. Fate Grand Order is one of the least rewarding gacha games of all time because of how scarce the currency Saint Quartz is. How much do you expect every pull to cost? 500? 600? Maybe even 1,000? No! Every pull is 3 Saint Quartz. And yet FGO is still an incredibly stingy game for F2P players compared to many other games. You will be hard-pressed to find an FGO player that claims it has a good pull economy, honestly. Just because the currency per pull is 3 doesn't mean you can do a load of pulls. It all depends on how much currency the game gives you. People are automatically assuming that just because the currency is 500 per pull, we're going to get absolutely cocked and get, let's say, the same amount of currency as the big 4 games. In my experience in Endfield so far, I was only able to play around 6 hours possibly, unoptimally by the way. I spent a lot of my time goofing around and I was still able to get 30 pulls on the limited banner, 40 pulls on the starter banner, which everyone will be able to get as well, and 40 pulls on the standard banner. So, TLDR, complaining about the pull economy just because it's 500 Oro Barrel every pull is really stupid, but of course, in the end, this will entirely depend on how much currency Hypergriff is willing to give us in Endfield, and based on their track record in Arknights, and in my experience in the beta, it's completely fine. Now let's really get down to the meat and potatoes of the whole debacle, which are the pity and spark system complaints. The whole issue is that the 120 on-banner character guarantee doesn't carry over between limited banners, and the only other way to get the on-banner character is by winning a 50-50, so people are up in arms. There is no shortage of people calling this a predatory system that will stop them from playing the game. The biggest problem I've seen from these complaints is that they always compare the worst case scenario in this game to the best case scenario in other games. The most common argument I see is, if you get 2 early 6 stars, then you could lose both 50-50s, but if you get 2 early 5 stars in other games, one is guaranteed to be the on-banner character. This argument may at first seem valid, but it is taking the worst best case scenario and putting it up against a best case scenario from another game. Well, let's fix it.
Okay.
The absolute worst case scenario in any of these games when pulling is reaching the hard guarantee. 160 pulls in Wuwa, 180 in Hoyo games, but of course only 120 in Endfield. If you are a person who claims to be always unlucky, then the least shafted you'll get in any of these games is in Endfield. You could lose 119 50-50s before getting the on-banner character, but chances are if you do get 2 early 5 stars, then you are getting the on-banner character because this is a 50-50. I know people hate 50-50s and for good reason. I'm not defending them, I'm just telling you to be realistic. But either way, the loss pool in Endfield is by far the smallest. Wuwa's is downright 50-50, Genshin has capturing Radiance, which applies after losing 2 50-50s. Endfield, however, isn't a true 50-50 because there will always be 2 limited operators in the 50-50 loss pool, making it a 50-50, and then if you lose, you roll a 2 out of 7. This might not seem huge statistically, but as we'll see later with a piece of code, it accounted to a lot of the limited 6 stars acquired in Endfield. Well now, what about the 120 spark not carrying over? I said it's fine, but I provided no reasoning as to why it is.
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Well, the 80 pity does carry over. If you pull 60 pulls on Levitane's banner, you will get a 6 star within 20 pulls on Yvonne's. Players will absolutely, certainly feel forced and pressured to not pull when they have less than 120 pulls. I am with you there. However, because of the 80 pulls carrying over, and along with limited units staying in the pool for 2 banner cycles, I just don't see it as that big of an issue on paper. In practice, it will entirely depend on how much currency we get, just like the rest of this gacha system, obviously. If the economy hovers around 110 pulls per patch, this is completely fine. Finally, just before we get to the code, I want to say that Dupes and Arknights, and so far in Endfield, are basically complete nothing burgers. The most they do is just stat and slight boost to what operators do, so that if you're ever able to get an early 6 star, you should just completely stop pulling right there, because no other 6 star will really benefit you that much, at least not any more than what saving your pulls would. They're unlike the other big 4, where dupes can potentially be insane upgrades. Also, weapons are free! Now, not every limited weapon will be purchasable, 6-star weapons costing, of course, 2,480 tickets, but last beta, Yvonne's weapon was purchasable, Levitane's currently isn't, so it might be a random chance thing. Now, the weapon gacha is 25.75, which isn't exactly very nice, but the rate for a 6-star to drop is 4%, so it's effectively a 1%, just like Wuthering Waves, actually. And again, it's free! If you don't get lucky, you probably would not be able to get every single 6-star weapon for every operator you get, especially if they're not purchasable, but you are totally able to get a lot. And again, it's free! Okay, now it's time to reveal the code. I rewrote this thing like 4 times because I had so many mistakes the first couple of times that actually really inflated a few numbers here and there, but now after I fixed them, the numbers are much more realistic. So in this piece of code, I have a simulation for Genshin's, Wuwa's, and Enfield's gacha systems, simulating 100,000 pulls on each, except I have 2 versions of Enfield, one that simulates pulling on one single banner continuously, only claiming the 120 guarantee once, and then claiming the bonuses every 240 pulls afterwards. Then, one that simulates an F2P's player experience, where the absolute max they'll go on a single banner is on 120. I also didn't include soft pity systems because those are a little harder to code, but I'm assuming they'd increase each game's final total 5-star or 6-star count by a few hundred, but they're just too similar and won't make much of a difference between the games themselves. So, let's get on to the results. So when pulling 100,000 times in Genshin Impact, you would get 11,814 4-star units or weapons, and 1,417 5-stars, 936 of those are limited and 481 are standard. When pulling in Wuthering Waves, you get 12,223 4-star units or weapons, and 1,681 5-stars.
Okay, so basically, Wuthering Waves is better than Genshin Impact. For the gacha, right? That's the main takeaway, right?
1,112 of which are limited and 569 are standard. This is totally expected because Wuthering Waves has both a higher 4-star and 5-star chance than Genshin. Now when it comes to Endfield, then rolling as a whale, as in simulating continuously rolling on one banner only, claiming with a 120 spark once and then the 240 bonuses infinitely after, you'll get 2,092 6-stars in total, 1,226 plus 272 of which are limited, and 594 are standard. This is also completely expected because it has the same rates and same pity as Wuthering Waves, but the additional bonuses of the 240 spark. This is because, again, when you collect the 240 spark, you're not guaranteed a 6-star at pull 240, instead you're guaranteed an extra 6-star token, regardless of whatever you got with the pull number 240. You also get much less 5-stars at 7,945 because Endfield actually has a pretty low rate of only 8% for 5-stars, but don't worry about that too much because dupes in this game only go up to 5 and not 6. Finally, when you pull in Endfield as an F2P player, meaning you stop when you get the featured 6-star or hit the 120 spark, which does get consumed when you get a featured 6-star unfortunately, you get the following. 1,191 plus 241 limited 6-stars and 515 standards. This is again entirely expected, although the 50-50 is not guaranteed, because the heart pity is so low, when you do in fact hit a worst case scenario, you are much better off in this game. So in the end, as I've always said, this system is a solid 7 out of 10, and in fact, when not counting weapons, I would also give Wuthering Waves a 7 out of 10. Endfield is not perfect and it can still be improved, mainly by making the 120 carryover and or not get consumed when you get the featured 6-star before it, and / by making 50-50s guaranteed, but does it need them in the end? No. This program showed that at the lowest, Endfield system is at the least better than WoW on Genshin when it came to total featured 6-star numbers, heavily supplemented by the limiteds you get when you lose the 50-50. Look, I may be a hypergriff hyperglazer, but I've always said that I will absolutely shit on a game when it deserves shitting on, even when it's Arknights, Endfield, or even Limbus and Battlecats. This is just not it. This gacha system is completely fine. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But it's also simply much better than both Wuthering Waves and Genshin, not only because the simulation showed we got more 6-stars, but also because the weapons are free. Okay, one last disclaimer before we end the video. Endfield did put out a tweet recently talking about how they were listening to feedback. They did mention feedback about gacha resource acquisition, which doesn't make me think that they're gonna change the rates at all, but instead, maybe the pull currency or the Arsenal tickets. We of course don't have any official information, but we'll see what happens. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching.
I think that's a really good video, man. We'll just have to take a look and see how the brand new changes they've made to the update for this live stream, right? And which honestly, I don't even think they added that much of a change. The only change is this. Right, this is the only change. And it doesn't even affect the current banner. So you get a free temple after this boost, and it doesn't build towards BD. Nor does it. Oh, wait. No. This is just a separate thing for you to gamble. It is like a one additional free temple just to gamble. If you win, you win, but if you don't win, you don't win. Alright? I think everything else has been like pretty much the same. I'm not too sure if this weapon crate is a new thing exclusively for the weapons. But in any case, I will be taking a deep dive into this off stream. I'll crunch the numbers a little bit and activate Prime Poke, and I'll cook you guys up with a video eventually. It's for the action. Looks like a W in my. I think it is pretty decent, right? It is just bad for two groups of players: the whales and players who have no self-control in a gacha game. So basically 99.9% of the entire player base. Very, very good. Very, very nice. You have cooled your last cool, my man.